If you've ever felt completely bombarded at work, your manager is hitting you with deep questions about stats, your inbox is pinging with random requests that aren't even your job, and every single task is marked urgent, then you know exactly how fast that stress turns into total overwhelm. We are often told the fix is just to prioritize better, but you cannot organize a massive, chaotic room until you buy the storage boxes for it. You need to build the framework of a productivity system first, before you can hope to manage the individual tasks. The mistake we all make is trying to solve or prioritize tasks while they're still floating in the air. That's a straight road to burnout. It's not a lack of effort, it's a lack of structure. To find any sense of mental clarity, you have to stop trying to solve your day in your head and start building physical and digital structures for your workload. In this video, I'm sharing the workflow that helped me. We're going to cover how to organize your incoming noise, build reporting for those surprise management questions, and create FAQ response systems so you stop drowning in repetitive work. We're moving away from the urgent culture and into a system that respects how my brain is actually built to function. I found that when you get the framework right, the stress just starts to dissipate. So if you're tired of living in a state of reactive chaos, let's stop the firefighting. And just as a side note, I'm going to share a bit of a personal update at the very end of this video. It's been a little bit of a rough season, but there's a small personal victory I wanted to share with those of you who have been following along. It's just a reminder that while these systems help us manage the grind, you can still find small victories in chaos. The first action my brain relies on for structure is mailbox organization, taming the daily inbox dump. We've all been there, you open your email and it's a wall-to-wall stream of noise. If you reply to every single message the second it hits, you're letting others dictate your entire day. You become reactive, and by lunchtime you're fried from decision fatigue. Instead, I use a category system to build a framework for the noise before doing any actual work. I use Outlook, but most email hosts have similar labels or tags. Whenever I'm going through my emails, I sort them into functional categories. For example, billing messages get a to invoice tag, new client requests go into the new account setup category, and if I'm waiting on another department or manager, I use the pending internally category because it's a stalled process. By putting it in this box, my brain knows it doesn't need to worry about it yet because the ball is in someone else's court. I spend my workday with my inbox sorted by date and conversation, filtering by category only when I need that specific view. I don't live in the category view because it breaks conversation threads, making it impossible to see context. So my emails stay as they arrived, but because I tagged them, when I allocate time for invoicing, for example, I simply filter the inbox by category, find the to invoice section, and I go at it one by one. It blocks out all other noise. I control when I look at the work doesn't control me. This brings me to the second tip, the unified data tracker. Most professionals hit similar roadblocks, like the nightmare of maintaining dual spreadsheets. It's that trap where you keep one messy, detailed document to manage your daily tasks, only to spend hours manually cleaning, editing, and copying that data into a second, polished report for management. It's an exhausting and a redundant waste of energy. Instead of maintaining a double life in your files, the goal here is to build one structure from the ground up that marries your daily workflow with your manager's reporting needs. I use Excel for my actual work because I track hundreds of entries, but for this system, I'll draw out the core skeleton so you can map it onto your Excel sheet, a notebook, or a whiteboard in 5 minutes. To show you what I mean, let's use an example from my previous role in credit control. A manager might pop up asking high-stakes questions. Who are your worst payers? Have you chased them? Is legal action worth it? If my workflow were separate from my reporting, answering those questions would result in hours of uncalculated extra work. So, I set up a framework to solve this. Remember, this principle works for any field, not just finance. When faced with these requests, don't start opening a million tabs or try holding the data in your head. Instead, think about the key metrics you need to track and structure your report into columns that serve both you and your management. Here's the logic. Your first tab is your workflow space. This is where you track the granular reality, the notes, the status, and your active steps. It keeps your head down and focused on execution. Behind the scenes, you build a second tab that connects to that workspace. Managers don't need to see details, they need the big picture. By setting up the structure once, the system automatically pulls the data they care about, the total overdue invoices or escalation status, and populates a clean, high-level overview. My motto is, automate what you can to offload manual work. You take the time to think about the structure now, so you can forget about the admin later. Whether you need basic totals or complex year-over-year comparisons, the principle remains the same. You are building an automated bridge between your daily tasks and your reporting metrics. By marrying these two worlds into one container, you stop the double handling. You keep your workflow clean, give your boss instant clarity, and ensure you only ever have to do the work once. And finally, I turn to tip number 3, my FAQ template library. Because categorizing the incoming chaos is only half the battle. The real secret to guarding your energy inside the inbox is stopping yourself from constantly reinventing the wheel. If you pay attention to your week, you'll realize that you are physically composing the exact same replies to the exact same queries over and over again, and it's an absolute drain on your focus. This is where my golden rule comes in. Don't start until you have everything. I used to dive into a project only to realize halfway through that I was missing crucial information. I'd have to leave it half done and walk away, but by the time I got what I needed, I'd lost my train of thought and wasted time re-researching the whole thing. Now, I treat the gathering phase as its own separate job. If I don't have the full picture, the task doesn't go on my to-do list. It stays in the pending pile. So part of my inbox strategy is building a library of bespoke email templates for those recurring questions. Whether it's a template for a friendly follow-up, delegation for when I get a request that should have gone somewhere else, or an incomplete request, Having these responses pre-written and ready to pull up in a pinch means I don't have to burn creative energy composing these responses one by one. These templates turn a 10-minute chore into a 3-second click, keeping my reactive work as compressed as humanly possible. When I can keep up with these organizational steps, my day job feels contained and intentional. Turning the page from a high-stakes workday isn't always a clean break. When life hits with complex legal situations, citizenship timelines, and household changes all at once, the stress doesn't just stay at the office. My personal life gets just as inbox heavy as my professional one. I use this brain dump list as my personal inbox. At this stage, a task doesn't need a home. It just needs to be out of my head. This is where I move the mental load from my brain onto paper, so I don't have to constantly think about them in order to not forget. Once the list is done, I build a framework. I assign deadlines, add priority numbers, and then I distribute. This list is just a transit point. The tasks don't stay here, they get slotted into their permanent homes. The deadline-heavy items live in my Filofax calendar, along with any smaller tasks that can go into the to-do list section. Even though this is supposed to be the dry information, I like to decorate my Filofax more than any other notebook I have. Maybe it's just about balancing things out. The dry calendar items need a bit of sprucing, while the creative notes need a bit of grounding. In my commonplace book, I keep things like long-term goals, quotes that shifted my perspective, or inspirational people I look up to. It serves as a running master list of my favorite things. It's a repository for thoughts that don't need the deadline today, but are vital for tomorrow. It's basically containing my identity. Then my content planner helps me bridge the gap between my creative work and my actual schedule, keeping my short-term project ideas from getting buried under the day-to-day. Finally, the list has served its purpose. It moved the chaos from my head onto paper and then from the paper into a system. I can rest easy that everything's on track. The chaos is contained, and I'm finally off the clock. Let's take control back from demanding bosses, complex life events, and the constant hum of to-dos. By building these habits, I've learned that the stress usually doesn't come from the work itself. It comes from the fear that something is slipping through the cracks. Like our brain, it's not one big messy blob. We have specialized areas, one part for motor skills, another for speech, another for reflexes. It's all about divide and conquer. That's why I don't use one notebook for everything either. My Filofax is my analytical cortex, my commonplace book is my master cortex, and my content planner is my creative cortex, just to run with the analogy. By giving each part of my life its own dedicated container, I'm not just organizing my desk, I'm respecting the way my brain likes to function. But speaking of high-stakes deadlines, I wanted to share a small update here. If you watched my last video, you remember I talked about booking my Life in the UK test. I booked it in a moment of frustration following a difficult situation. It was a spite move, a way to reclaim control. Well, I'm happy to report that I passed. And looking back, it's a reminder that some of the best things and the most meaningful victories are often born from our most difficult situations. But if you're doing all of this and you still feel like you're drowning, it might not be your fault at all, and it might not be your system's fault either. Sometimes a job just demands more than any human being can reasonably give. If a role is fundamentally unsustainable, no amount of planning will fix it. Sometimes the most professional thing you can do is recognize that a job simply isn't worth the cost of your mental peace.